What is up, guys? Hold on. What's up, guys? It's your boy GRC. We're coming at you live every single day at 11 a.m. Eastern. And today we have a really special one. Me and Sam have been talking about the centralization of Ethereum proof of stake for a few days now. And I've asked every thought leader that I can. And frankly, the answers are we're not sure what's going to happen. I hope our bags pump. Pretty much. Everyone just wants pump action. We have a lot of things going. Chia is what we're talking about today. And I think it's got a lot of things going for it. And I think it might be one of those things that wins by survival because other things might centralize themselves. But these things can take years to play out. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the intro to Chia. We have crypto curricula, accept cookies, hex orca, whatever you want to call him, you call him. But he's on the show with Sam Stone. Sam has reviewed the white paper. We want to move away from centralization. And I know it's not a sexy topic, but I don't really give a shit. It's the truth. All right?
You already know what time it is. Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning. Waiting on phone. Crypto in the morning. 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 Waiting on phone. Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning. Smoking a blunt on my way to the gym. 11 a.m. and I'm already tuned in. Got me some hacks and I'm making a stake. Got me some heads on, I'm making it rain. Pay me some maxi and that just in case. Jim Reddit sent me to show you the way. Crypto in the morning. 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 Crypto in the morning.
Oh, there he is. How you doing, bro? It's good to see you back here. It's good to see everybody else. And we have been talking about proof of stake a lot and some of the issues with proof of stake, in my opinion. Rather, proof of work is higher security, less centralization. Now you're moving to POS and you're like, okay, cool. Well, now it's super easy to regulate these guys. We might as well start regulating these guys. We might as well start targeting them and forcing KYC or other things that are going to be coming down the pike. But what if there was a solution? What if there was an alternative? What if there was something that had greater decentralization than Ethereum and higher security than Ethereum because it has a boatload, it's a technical term, of nodes, more than Ethereum? And we have the man. What do you want me? What do you want us to call you? Cookies?
You can call me whatever, dude. As long as you recognize me from somewhere, then that's.
Well, you're going to be on the thumbnail, and trust me, I'm going to get creative with that bad boy. There's going to be lots of sprouts in that one for sure. But I want to know where you would want us to start. We got young guys in here, and I tell you, I got a lot of guys in here that bought Bitcoin before I did. They're 17 years old. They're smart. They're quick. You know, they have skills. Where do they start? Where can we start this conversation out to kind of let the new guys know that this is a topic that, yeah, you need a little interest, but let's get into the details.
You bet. So we'll start with a really high-level view of the basics of Chia network, the blockchain. We'll discuss the security factors and the decentralization and why there's an argument to be had that the security of the network of Chia is actually greater than that of Bitcoin. And it's not a stone's throw argument to say that it's far more decentralized than Ethereum. A couple of starting points. You have folks that are in crypto. They are playing with Ethereum. They're looking forward to the launch of a new proof of stake chain. They're going to be a little more hip than folks that have never heard of the stuff. And I'm still trying to figure out how to make it easy to explain to folks who have never heard of the stuff. So it probably is better to start with your audience or the people that you kind of described, that they're young, they're hip to tech, they want to move fast, and get on the exciting train that has the most promise. So a lot of times Bitcoin has carried the brand name in crypto as sort of the introduction. We know it's not a scam. It's had the best performance on the chart. It has the most time in the market. It's been highly liquid and traded in almost every country around the world. So there's a lot of vote of confidence there and a big community.
Hey,
However,
sorry. You're every maybe 10 seconds, your audio cuts out for like 1 full second.
Really?
Do you think it's just lagging a little bit? He's probably just lagging a little bit.
Might just be.
I could hear you pretty good. But
Yeah,
I noticed it too.
Okay, it did happen. Well, I'm gonna try to get people to intro how I think about what Chia is as a thing that people might be able to relate to. So I read the white paper. I don't own any, but I think it's fascinating. Where proof of work, you have a computer. That computer processes transactions and keeps the network secure. Another way to think about the mining on Bitcoin is you're basically paying to put your shit on the blockchain. That's how I describe it to some people. You pay to send mail with USPS, right? You're paying on a blockchain to send your shit to the cloud effectively, right? Well, on proof of stake, you're doing this, but instead of having me paying Orca or me paying GRC or me paying somebody else with proof of stake, you pay all the people that already have the money effectively, right? And so it becomes more and more centralized, and the security, at least where we're positioned right now, has been decreased, right? Where Chia, instead of using processing transactions like a miner where anybody can do it, or instead of you have to have a lot of money to do it on proof of stake, Chia has something, and please correct me, you have proof of space, or you need to have a hard drive, and it needs to have memory on that hard drive in order to be on the blockchain. So take it from there, whatever I missed in there, or expand upon it from there.
Yeah, that was a really great explanation. The consensus mechanism of Chia is called the proof of space and time. Proof of space is exactly what you alluded to with hard drives. Rather than these expensive ASIC miners, the Chia network full nodes are comprised of storage space. So you could use a hard drive disk, you could use a solid state drive, and you're essentially, the more space you commit to the network, that's your hash rate in Bitcoin, your security function. It's the proof of work that you're committing to ensure that you are an honest node in the network. But the real proof of work inside of Chia is in the hard drives, and why we're using this technology, because Chia presents an opportunity for a far more decentralized blockchain, nodes that are very efficient. Anybody can run them on very standard computing equipment, low barrier to entry as far as costs go. Scalability is very attainable and even fits into currently existing enterprise solutions of corporations. And then you have just the difference of how the mechanism of consensus works. Rather than constantly hashing, constantly spending energy to battle for the award and to validate a block, you just do some hard labor up front, and then you yield the benefit of that labor for a long time to come. So in Chia, we plot our hard drives. If you imagine a hard drive, right, it's your little disk, it's about a little thicker than a phone, full of storage space. You're going to fill that with cryptographic hashes. It's like nonsense to you and I. It just looks like the random letters and numbers of the transaction hashes that we have in Ethereum, right? When you go on Etherscan. Well, it's filling up all of the storage space with tables that are formatted with specific hash data that will be checked for later when blocks are being established and transactions are being validated. And the reason that that's important is because in order to fill up the hard drive, your computer has to actually go to work, and it has to start kind of printing or burning that data onto the hard drives, which can always be wiped empty clean and even resold on the secondary market later. But in that meantime, when you're plotting your hard drives, it is going to use compute power, and you'll begin filling up that storage space. Then every roughly 10 seconds on average, same as like Bitcoin, a block is
10
going
seconds or
to,
10 minutes?
I'm sorry, every 10 minutes, going to be selected as an opportunity to, publish transactions to the blockchain. These are called transaction blocks. They're actually more significant than these intermediary blocks that we have, which do actually improve the throughput. It's higher throughput than BTC. And you're saving energy because you're only really burning the computer the one time that you fill up the hard drive. Once it's full, it acts as like a bingo card. And the consensus mechanism is a randomly selecting search puzzle that is trying to find a specific result on a bingo card. And if your hard drive holds that hash information, that square on the bingo card, then you win and you can validate that next block, earn the rewards, and continue the building of the chain into a longer and heavier chain.
Is it similar to BTC mining where you join a pool, or is this something more so like HNT, right? Helium. I think it's helium. Where
it's kind of both, really. It's very similar to BTC in the sense that there is the ability to pool the consensus power. It's actually an improvement over the BTC model in which the pool signs the block. In Chia, even though you are receiving the aggregate benefit of being in a large group of people that are all pooling their space together to try to win blocks and to have the bingo card that's going to get called, you actually still, if your hard drive has the bingo square that wins the block, you actually sign it from your individual node. It's every individual farmer within the pool, the farming pool, is acting independently, but the math aggregates the rewards appropriately to the proportion of space that you're providing to the network, right? Everyone's contributing a percentage, and that's their odds of.
And Sam, I could just read the section from the FAQ to you. It might clear something up. This is exact. So it says farming requires nodes to locally stored large files called plots. These consist of random data and are at the heart of Chia's proof of space consensus mechanism. These plots are used to solve a challenge similar to how proof of work requires miners to do computational work. They function as the lottery ticket to the block reward for solving the puzzle. The more space nodes provide on their computer, the higher the chance they win the block. And I'll just read this last part, and I'll just finish it off. Time Lord nodes have a special function as they broadcast proofs of time every 9 seconds. Time Lord nodes are informed when unfinished blocks are submitted to the network and will then work on a proof of time using a verifiable delay function, FDF. VDF, put differently, they announce the winning nodes. If a farmer wins the lottery drawing, they can process the highest paying transactions from the mempool into a new block and broadcast this to the network. This ensures correct documentation of time and allows the Chia network to process more transactions per second than POW blockchains like Ethereum, where nodes have to constantly synchronize to the state of the blockchain. Chia thus combined the security of POW blockchains with the performance and energy of the POS blockchains.
So, thank you for pulling that up. As he was reading through that and putting together what you were saying, when your proof of work, say with Bitcoin, I have a miner and it's solving a problem, right? And it solves the problem and then it puts that out. If I'm understanding correctly, could be wrong, please correct me. So it's solving this problem, right? And it's trying to get that lottery ticket to get the block in Bitcoin effectively, right? Where this is almost preloading all of the lottery tickets. And then it's just like, here's the lottery ticket. And then it's like, which pool is this lottery ticket in? Because a hash rate or like a hash function or hash, whatever it's called, it's just a long string of gobbledygook that we don't understand. Each piece means something. And it's just looking for this on this giant, database of space out there. How does the time piece play into this? Because VDL or whatever.
Yeah, they are their own nodes, and they're actually used for literal, like geographical as well as theoretical space. You're talking about a decentralized network that's competing to become first in line to win a race, and they get the next block. And so that variable delay function is a piece of math that is trying to avoid collisions of nodes signing a block at the same time, and to establish who actually has precedent and wins the actual block. So it's whichever node, all three of us are a node, and then there's some, this Time Lord node out here. We're all in different parts of the world, and we all find the answer to the puzzle at the same time, and we all send the answer to the chain. The first Time Lord that picks up that correct puzzle will timestamp and validate with that hash, and that will determine the singular winner of the puzzle.
So say, to relate it back to the lottery analogy, there's a global like lottery, let's say, and I have a winning ticket, but you also have a winning ticket, and GRC has a winning ticket. And the first person that goes through and like, hey, I put mine into the system before you, gets all of the reward instead of it being split. Okay. And that happens
but in a pool, you're going to be set up with rules that are profit sharing, right? In nature, every block that's won by the pool, you're going to earn a small amount of fee for participating and being a part of that net space. But as far as the literal node that gets the signature, it is all or nothing. Either you signed the block or a different node signed that block. And that's where, in the case of the pools, they'll often do a reward where the node that actually leaves the signature gets disproportionately more of the reward, and the pool gets the rest of whatever is the remainder from that cut. And so in that way, you do actually have the ability to get like all the benefits of increased exposure by joining the net space that everyone else is providing, and still really reaping reward because you're not fully diluted, in the case that the amount of net space you're providing are your odds of whether or not you get to win the next block. And if you do, despite being one tiny provider in a massive pool, you still get the majority of those rewards in that block. So other than that, you're just earning a small fractionary reward because you're in a pool that happens to win blocks far more often than a single farmer that has very little space committed to the network, or like hash rate committed to Bitcoin.
So question, technically, and then I wanted to talk about this on a macro level a little bit, but why is the VDL or whatever it was, VDR, why is that every 9 seconds, but only a block is happening every 10 minutes?
Well, the transaction, there are blocks that are happening 10 seconds. There's one validation block or transaction block, I think it's actually referred to, that happens every 10 minutes. So it is higher throughput. You are getting real blocks, but the signage blocks that occur more slowly, and I might be wrong about 10 minutes. It might be every 3 blocks. It could be something weird. I'm kind of on like empty brain mode right now. But that's going out because there are real intermittent blocks that are being filled with transactions. But the real benefit of having these Time Lords is that there will come a time, there have been times, there currently are times where blocks aren't full. And so you want to still be able to validate transactions and not be stalled. You don't want the chain to not be executing the consensus. So you'd rather just continue signing blocks, even if they're not really full of much, because at least you're maintaining a consistent growth and weight to the chain. Well, if we are all committing, or we're all publishing transactions to fill a block, then in the case that a block isn't going to be filled, or there's multiple empty blocks that are coming to the chain, as long as we just know the order in which they came, we can still order the transactions by value, highest to lowest, and push through in that order, which is the agreed upon consensus model. And then that way you're going to continue to have the security, you're going to have throughput, and you're not going to risk like a ghost chain event.
So that's why I want to get into that eventually, but I have more questions about this. You said sometimes there's blocks that go through that don't have transactions, right? So from my understanding,
that aren't full of them.
Right. So for people who aren't aware of this, or basically me to paraphrase and make sure that my understanding is correct, that's why I'm doing this, is so you have this block, right? And this cup here, this sparkling water, I can hold 12 ounces of liquid inside of here, and it leaves this much space at the top of it, which you can call the MV, the EVM, the profit that you can pull out as a miner, so to speak. Well, in here in the Chia network, there might only be this many transactions at a specific time in existence, and it's not completely full in that space. That I think is that the issue, because you would see this as being like valuable.
Well, it's an issue that exists in all blockchains. Like Bitcoin doesn't always have full blocks. Ethereum doesn't always have full blocks. It's very uncommon for Ethereum to not have full blocks. But there were times that Ethereum didn't have full blocks. And like Ethereum proof of work certainly doesn't have full blocks. Fair Ethereum doesn't have full blocks. And yet the consensus mechanism they're using doesn't necessarily, it's not optimized to exist in an environment of continued partial blocks. It's designed with the anticipation that commitment of hash power is in some way correlated with the amount of activity that people want to actually use that given network for. But in the case of a new launching chain that doesn't necessarily have the network effect or a sustainable marketplace of buyers and sellers, you might have a disproportionate representation of hash rate committing the proof of work. And wow, how secure is this network? And there's nobody in there shopping or doing any business or moving any coin. And so in that case, that's not a more secure chain. That's a very centralized chain. You're going to be the first schmuck to walk into the casino and just hope that they give you the money that you're owed if you hit the jackpot or whatever. So in that case, the ability to account for not always full blocks and still maintain a understanding of the order of the transactions and the value of those transactions it's a more secure and more efficient means of maintaining a more consistent mechanism of consensus.
So the security, right? So with, say, Ethereum, the blockchain that everybody's heard of, that like, after Bitcoin type thing, that has, well, last time we checked 6, 7, 8 months ago or something, it was like 5,000 nodes on the network. And one of the issues with that is that there's so much value, in my opinion, and I think that Chia potentially solves this, is that people want an economic incentive to do things, and the way that Ethereum was designed, it doesn't have an incentive to run. There's another network, I don't remember the name of it, but it starts, I think it was the K, and they figured out the alignment of economic incentives, so miners as well as nodes get a reward so that you increase the decentralization of the network. Can you talk about that stuff with Chia? Like, how did the nodes work? Because you have a time node and the node, but also kind of miner type nodes.
Yep. You got it. So we'll separate those two, right? You have the Time Lord node, and then you have we'll call it like the full node. Time Lord nodes cannot earn any reward. There's no financial incentive to run them. They're also virtually free to run, extremely low overhead. If you're running a full node, you're already dealing with a sunk cost great enough to shoulder the unintended consequence of a redundancy Time Lord. There's already Time Lords in the network. And she is also partnering with a company. I can't recall the name off the top of my head. Like I said, I'm kind of foggy, but they're creating an ASIC Time Lord that's going to optimize the efficiency of Time Lord functions to such an extreme that it's like, 3 of them anywhere on Earth would achieve the same amount of decentralization as 1 million everywhere on Earth. So, but of course there will be thousands because the redundancy is nice. It's nice to always just add security. And in the case of the reward incentive for farming in Chia, so this is a little funny, like, why does he keep saying farming? In Bitcoin, you mine Bitcoin. The reason that it's called mining is to imply the very heavy, intensive or energy intensive work to secure the network. And in Chia, they call it farming because, just like Sam said earlier, where you're sort of putting the work in up front and then it's paying you dividends in the future. It's like farming. You're planting your seeds, you're doing all that work, you're toil in the soil, and then you're going to have the harvest. And the idea is that the proof of work happens up front, and then that's sufficient, and sustaining that containment of your proof of work is just as valuable as continually doing work itself, is sort of another way of looking at it. The incentives, as far as the blocks go, there is liquidity, there is a real price. There are calculators that you can figure out how much net space you either can already provide, or if heaven forbid you want to go out and like buy a ton of hard drives, I think Chia really does show you the path to recycling and like reusing and secondary marketplace. A secret link, the alpha link that you guys need and everyone should be aware of is chialinks.com. And that is a website that aggregates pretty much every useful and trusted domain and tool within the Chia network universe. It'll have your NFT platforms, whatever the DEX platforms may be, whatever the best rig setups might be for like money efficient Chia farming, all sorts of stuff you can find on there. And
Okay.
go ahead.
So Chia, thank you. This is super interesting. I just pulled up the site. Okay, so Chia's $33 right now, roughly. How one thing that people want is there's so many people that just are like, don't have a lot of money. They want more money. And that's just a big issue with so many people in America and around the world because of like the monetary system and like plenty of other reasons. But people want to know, and it's very easy to grasp being able to take something that like you get and this thing just generates you money, right? Versus like the divide from legacy to crypto. Like sometimes it takes a while to like get over here, right? Yeah. But like, hey, you get this miner and it generates income is a much easier conceptual thing for a lot of people to grasp. What are we talking about from like a return? I know it varies, all that shit. Right?
I got you.
But like,
I got you.
Can you talk about that piece a little bit?
Yeah, I think a better tool than me giving you, as you know, and as you alluded to, there's the speculative nature. Chia's price can go up and down. Cost of a hard drive can go up and down. Sure. I think maybe a simpler way for us to grasp what am I going to spend and what can I potentially earn. There is a company that is producing what's called the Evergreen miner. And it's kind of nice because this isn't our absolute cheapest approach, but if you are someone who would like a little convenience, it's a way that you can not break the bank, be in it for the long haul, and the ROI does make sense. To just plug this thing in, it's preloaded with the plots. You don't have to be the person that does the proof of work. It's already done. It's in a file. There's no way anyone can like remotely steal your files from you. Nothing goofy like that. And you basically just plug it into a USB port, allow the full node client that's running on your computer or laptop to access the internet, and you're validating the network and earning block rewards over time, right? Because it's a chance. I would say put yourself into a pool, and then that way it's kind of like earning a daily dividend, or well, not daily. It's whenever you reach 0.01 XCH is usually when they'll send you the emission. You can throttle that up or down, but you just think about like gas efficiency the same way you do on Ethereum. Like how often do you really want to be clogging up shit? And
that happens in the real life. I have affiliates for other like in fitness type stuff that I do, and
yeah, you guys could literally start the crypto in the morning Chia farm and get with a couple of people in the community to start your own pool, your own NFT pool, and then people on the show, if they want to run a node at home and maybe they got like a old Western Digital 2 terabyte removable hard drive that they kind of forgot about, fucking load that thing up with some plots. You're farming Chia with the gang in the morning, and like it's all the time, but it's really efficient. It's not.
And I think it's good timing that we talk about this. Sam's been talking about proof of work options for a few days now, constantly. So have I. Talking about how we want proof of work back. Talking about how we want some sort of.
Well, here's how you get it, man. I'm totally with you. Here's how you get it, and no one wants to talk about it because all of a sudden we all become friends again instead of being maxis in our tribes. But like the same way that Bitcoin became infinitely more valuable when it was able to be wrapped and brought onto Ethereum and you can use it in DeFi, it's just got way more utility. You could argue that it provides a secondary layer of decentralization away from the mining network itself. And it does truly bring to light that these are all just socially enforced consensus mechanisms as well as social contracts. The price is what you and I agree to exchange it for. And that's where Chia has the opportunity to interrope these other chains and use truly trustless bridges to get their assets onto a truly decentralized proof of work efficient network. And then that way you can still have your funny business proof of stake chains and you can maintain your funny business proof of stake consensus, and that's fine, but your assets exist virtually everywhere, right? We're on this multi-chain universe.
So can you talk about this, right, from the standpoint, like there's a boatload of different networks out there and most of them don't have much activity on them. and the everybody's like paying attention to Ethereum, right? But the interoperability is like when that I think that might get solved in 2023 to a great like a big step forward, not like permanent,
Big step.
but like
Big step.
What'd you say?
Big step. I'm with you. Big
Like
step.
it needs to be solved because once interoperability is solved to like a big like how Uniswap came out, right? That was incredible. There was like, holy, we have a path forward, right? Once that happens with like trustless bridges in a way that allows people to move much more easily at a lower cost, holy, that's going to be massive. But how does Chia like? How is that going to differentiate itself or be you mentioned NFTs and there's a DEX or something out there, but like how do you get the users on there? Because it's like if blocks are not filled, like how do you get more people on there, or like how is that playing out? Is there development happening? All that shit.
So you nailed it. You know why Ethereum's popular? It was the first DeFi, but like Bitcoin would have blown it away if they developed on-chain smart contracts and fungibility of smart tokens and stuff like that. But we only use Ethereum because we all showed up and started using Ethereum. And that's just where the market showed up. And then it's really hard to move that somewhere else unless there's such a significant like savings or quality improvement, right? And so with Chia, they, Bram Cohen, the founder, and Gene Hoffman, who's now on board as the COO, they've been focusing with the ends in mind from the beginning, and the development began in 2017. So they were working on their justification for the business model effectively, and from the beginning focused on the real world, the world of business, the world of highly regulated, very useful products and services. And where are the inefficiencies in these people's operations? Where does blockchain technology really fit and make sense? And what they identified, and with their relationships, and now where partnerships are forming and really building out, like you won't know what's happening until it's already kind of blown by you, is a trustless carbon credit market that has multiple governments and multiple international banking institutions on board as utilizing the Chia network's technology as their public marketplace for the exchange of tokenized carbon credits that they believe they can now truly authenticate the validity and quality of these carbon credits and quantify their liquid market value in exchange. They believe that there's enough demand there given the partnerships. This is now live, literally as of like within the last couple of weeks has now gone live. And for the last year or two has been going through kind of like the test phases, 3 test phases. So this is like actually happening. And this isn't your buddy down the street that like smokes cigarette butts out of the garbage can. These are like, real governmental institutions, real banking institutions. There's partnerships with global powerhouses in the digital storage industry, as well as in I believe, and don't quote me on this, we can all go Google it after, but it's fun to say, so I'm going to say it anyway. I believe Chia Network's like corporate office is right next door to the SEC's office. Like they are not interested in how many degens can we get in here and flip a bunch of monkey pictures. What they would like to do is solve real world problems. And in order to do that, they're building out highly useful primitives that developers are able to come and build useful tools on. It's not as sexy as having a lot of, standards already, the Ethereum 721 standard for your NFTs and all of these really obvious Ponzi-nomics that have been refined over the years on Ethereum of how to sucker people into bad projects and scams. Chia's not interested in that. She is much more interested in enterprise level solutions. How do you get a world of highly competitive allies to compete for good? And I think the carbon credit market is sort of an obvious narrative that we're seeing, in the political realm, where there's all of this attention on climate and your emissions and things like that. But if you think about it from sort of a game theory standpoint, all of these different countries are responsible for their constituents and for their industry and their thriving defense against, potential threats. And we're moving away from high conflict, high casualty based brutal warfare. It obviously still exists, and I'm not saying that it's going to, I'm not making the world peace pitch here, but there is a very interesting conversation to be had about the petrodollar and how maybe the world would look different if you were pricing things in the quantitative analysis of how to keep the world a nice place with trees and flowers. Like that's sort of an interesting flip of a paradigm, and Chia is the front runner of
I-
expertise in that space.
I think that anybody, the people who orchestrate, the global political infrastructure, wars, etc., are recognizing that it is a lot cheaper to just manipulate people here than going over pow pow, right? It's far easier to steal people's money by just manipulating.
And it's more productive.
Correct. If I want to steal shit from you, if I want to take shit from you, I can come over there and break your leg, or chop your mom's head off and be like, "Yo, give me your shit," or you're the next person in your family dies. Or I can just manipulate you here to just give me your.
To make you believe that's what you wanted to do all along, is to just give me what I wanted to
Oh, I know that vibe so well. I hate that vibe. But that's what
And
everyone in
that's
crypto does. Vitalik was talking about that, and I don't really believe Vitalik as far as some of. Well, let's not even talk about that. But he was mentioning that a lot of people are just looking for someone to motivate them, and
Sure.
some guys are very smart with that because they're salesmen and they have so much life experience, and you can use that for good. I could just be like, hey, I want to be the best and try to be transparent. Or what I could do is be as charismatic as I possibly could, be emotionally detached completely, and use that for the wrong idea, in my opinion. And I think that
that's how a lot of the shilling goes. That's why you end up with centralized exchanges and people's money disappearing.
Guys, check this out. Look how skilled your boy. I mean, I did
That's
this.
great, dude.
I mean, come on. There's cookies, intro to Chia, special guest accept cookies. Look at me and Sam
So good,
farming
dude.
Chia, just like
I look
that.
like
That looks so good, dude.
I'm like shitting on video there. So question. So, say somebody has 5 terabytes.
Okay.
Sort of. I've got like a hard. I've got like one right here, right?
Yep.
And they're using that to farm. And I love your analogy there, like the work today for future rewards. They're farming with that. Is that like you're going to earn $1 a month? Is it like
Probably not. If you're doing 7 terabytes, you probably shouldn't expect to win a block if you're solo farming for a decade, maybe 15 years. There are some people that are committing petabytes to the network. There are, again, opportunities for large companies to decommission their memory, which typically they'll throw in the landfill when it's 80% through its projected lifespan. Now you could use the last 20% to farm Chia, and maybe that offsets some costs. But you could, on the alternative, take that 7 terabytes, go into a pool, and you're going to be earning some fraction of Chia all the time. Just whenever that pool wins blocks, you're only going to be rewarded with your proportion of the network. But here's the cool thing, right? Is Chia's $30 and Bitcoin is proven that it can go higher than $30. So there's crypto that does great when there is purpose behind it or the market really wants to buy it up. So if you fall into the belief that you don't want to spend money to make money, but you would like some exposure to asymmetric potential returns, then it does make sense, in my opinion, to take that very negligible increase in your electrical bill to fill up 7 terabytes with plots and feel good about yourself for producing a more decentralized blockchain, helping the efforts of censorship resistance. And you're participating in a pool that's always winning these block rewards throughout the day because it's large enough. But if you're earning we call them mojos. There's Satoshis to Bitcoin. There's mojos to Chia. Well, if you have a couple hundred mojos to your name, and then one day Chia is $1 trillion, I guess you did it all right. So it's just all about how you want to look at it. And I think Chia really has done a service to the market by not being sexy, by not being a big shill fest on number go up. It really has been dev oriented, build first, ugly, trial by fire, open source, the way it should be done. and that has led to some good innovation so far. I'm excited to see what else
And
there's
sometimes that can lead to pinching the
yet to come.
price. Like we see this in a lot of cryptos is the price chart goes down initially and then everyone forgets about it. And the people that really believed in it generally, if they wait long enough, see some pretty darn
Yep.
big rewards because they're like, wow, I waited in a pool of everyone else who got out, right? You 99% of people get out, and then you're like talking to your 8 buddies and you're all back in the same spot. And then the bull market comes and Solana goes from $6 to 194. And so does,
Yeah.
trust me,
And-
Chia moves.
And this is a perfect example of what actual DeFi price charts look like, and what actual market making looks like. And for the first time in a long time, I'm getting to see price discovery in the same phase as the chain developing its core infrastructure. That's you'd have to go back 4 or 5 years. So there's Chia building out like the first block, right? The very first supply to come into existence had to be farmed into existence. Now there is a pre-mine. The company, Chia Network, owns custody of it. And they have their own private custody solution, which is actually going to be public open source through and through. They have air gapped offline computers in Faraday cages with their own wallet logic that they've written, which allows for clawbacks. It allows for rate limiting, time limiting, rekeying of the private keys if signatures come together in a majority. Rules that you can set in ways that just are not available right now on Ethereum. And with the coin set model of Chia, make a ton of sense. These are the kinds of things when we think about how much activity Ethereum has. Guess what? Your Fed coin is not going to launch on Ethereum. Like that's not a good network for highly centralized money unless you are also the majority of the consensus. So that would just, could it work through subsidiaries of like exchanges? Sure, but that's not really a good secure model. They'd rather go to Chia where there's real ability for programmable money that is highly extensible and truly decentralized, which overcomes the lesser nature of people that might accidentally one day flip the switch and ruin people's lives. Wouldn't it be best if you just began on a network where they could never undo the altruistic start? Would be a much safer model.
So you're I like Chia. I want to ask about just to remind myself about the wallet and then how to get it. But before I do that, I think of Chia similar to say Linux versus say Windows or the Mac operating system, where the Windows operating system is extremely popular, right? Then you have Apple operating system, which a lot of people also like there, but you have Linux, which is, could be argued as a much better solution from like a technical standpoint or like the capability, flexibility, like you name it, right on that front. And how I wanted to bring this to Chia is like that's kind of it appears at surface level, not diving in as deep as you, but it appears I read the white paper, read some stuff on it, that's kind of like where it's at. How do you think? Is it because Linux is still there, but it's kind of like that third option? Like
your brain is right on the right track, and you're even saying things that are hilariously analogous to how Chia currently exists and will continue to develop. You nailed it. Like Linux is the more extensible, highly customizable, less safety rails. You got to just build it from the ground up kind of code. But Windows is probably more popular for users, and Mac OS is probably more popular for users. Devs probably Linux. Chia is written in Lisp, and Lisp is highly extensible, one of the first, if not the first, full Turing language, and that allows them to build out they call them primitives, which are effectively the building blocks that can say I'm the master Lisp coder who also knows how to code EVM or in Python and whatever. I come and can take my skills and build a primitive on Chia that allows people who tend to write in the languages that are more commonly found in EVM chains and translate effectively where it fits. There will be a debugging process. There will be the exploratory which variables can't translate to the right counter chains, variables, whatever. But those primitives will eventually build the dev environment that allows people to seamlessly bring these chains together, because they're building the same network they were already used to, and it's seamlessly communicating to a chain that, has the length, has the weight, and has the true proof of work values in terms of its mechanism of consensus. So it is able, like, Linux is still hot if you're a dev.
Correct. But it's just like an afterthought to like 99% of the population, because they don't understand Linux.
It's not sexy. It's not sexy.
So how do you see that playing out? Like, is it, because Chia as a macro, we're still so early. Like, obviously, I don't know what's going to happen, but
yeah,
like, you know what I mean? Can it
download the full node client, man? I promise you're going to open up Chia's full node client that has your wallet, it has tokens, it has NFTs, and then it has the node functions, which are your full node itself with the blocks, the transactions, farming, which is your harvesting plots that you have, and then actual spot for pooling. The user interface is so much better than MetaMask. The display is larger, customizable. It's much more user friendly. There are some hiccups that are a little tricky that even I had hiccups with today, where because of how brilliantly Bram built the math behind the UTXO that Chia uses, the CoinSet model, your wallet is, how like MetaMask you have your multiple accounts. Well, your wallet is wallets inside of wallets. And so in your one wallet, which will be displayed on screen, as far as like, I was looking at all my NFTs. Okay. So I thought I was looking at a bunch of NFTs I'm getting ready to do a giveaway tonight with, and I see them in my GUI for Chia. And then I shared what I thought was like my public address on Twitter with everybody. And they were like, dude, there's no NFTs in this wallet. And I was like, I'm looking at them right here. And what I had found when I went and I investigated the hash of where these NFTs were sent to, they were sent to addresses that exist within my wallet, but Chia just derives and increments new addresses, new wallets constantly. And you have an infinite number of wallets, but they're all corresponded back through the private keys. Your private keys have the ownership of all of the accessibility to those assets. And then you can do now, which is pretty recent in the last month or so, DIDs, digital IDs. So I went into my Chia chat, right? And I'm like, hey guys, I'm trying to show everyone these NFTs. They're saying they don't exist. And they said, well, just make a DID. So what we're going to do, and what I'll do after the stream, is I'll make like the cookie jar, and that'll be a digital ID where I will assign all of my NFTs to, and I'll effectively move them all to that digital ID. And then that's its own wallet as well. But it has like its own name, the way that you think of an ENS name, a .eth. It has like its own .xch, and I can type what I want it to be called. And then I know that if I share that wallet public address, people can see everything that's right there under that DID. So it's kind of like a nice little filing cabinet system.
Does that digital ID type thing, can people follow a trail back to your wallet? Because that could be utilized for security as well.
Yes, they can tie back the DID to the wallet that generated that DID, but not like doxing you, right? However, you could just spin up a new private key and a DID, and then assign your NFTs from the other full node wallet to that DID. You just send them there.
But that transaction,
there would be that transaction, but there wouldn't be any prior history of that wallet. So I mean, there's only so much that you can peel back, right, in terms of Genesis transactions. They are coming up with privacy solutions, so that's another thing where you say like, well, how are you going to get the users? It's like, well, privacy is like number one, first and foremost in Chia. Like, we understand decentralization, we understand autonomy and sovereignty, and privacy is an inalienable right. So just because it doesn't exist yet, it's not that it's not happening. It's absolutely happening. Same with these trustless bridges. It's just a matter of, it's got to be built, and I'm not building it, so I can't really complain. But that is happening, and those are things like Bram is building a poker client on Chia that's like actual trustless gaming, as opposed to pseudo random. There will be true random and there will be real game, and not a dealer. It'll just be a program.
And
So
is
those
that
lines
when
can
you
handle
say
it.
a client built on Chia, is that the same thing as like a token built on top of Ethereum?
Sure. It could be. I'm sure that's probably the way it'll look. In Chia, it's interesting. The smart tokens are called CATs, Chia Asset Token, and the CATs are issued out of raw XCH. So it's like XCH is copper and ERC20s are pennies that you make out of your raw material.
And
So
so
unlike
that's
Ethereum,
the
where you can just,
Chia is XCH.
yes,
So you take XCH
yes,
to basically convert it into
into a
hacks
smart
or
contract
whatever
token.
something.
You got it. You got it.
ERC20.
And
Oh,
so that's where I've had conversations with the Chia community and the Hex community. And it's like, it's interesting because Hex and the inflation model that it does, as far as we've, back of the napkin talked about this, we don't think it would be possible to build it on Chia, because Chia would require base XCH coin to create a supply. And you can't just inflate that supply now. You'd have to go and repump the XCH into this new coin. So
So you have to use the
until
process all the way. Like you got to use. You can't like just like.
Chia is a hard currency, it is a real money that is the actual bid currency, the unit of account to bid on block space to get access to a
so
decentralized network.
that right there is, so you getting users on, you said a minute ago, but that right there is like, because that's a bottleneck for people, developers, right? Because they want to be able to do something like this without capital cost, but that creates a capital cost.
So there are ways around it. Chia is, so, man, we can just go forever. I love this. Chia has what we call data layer. So imagine you already know what a blockchain is. You guys have already become comfortable with there's nodes, there are participants, and there are transactions with assets. Okay. Well, data layer is sort of taking the idea of a decentralized network and getting all of the benefits of privatized networks. Because what we can do with data layer is privately host databases and commit that data cryptographically to the chain with a singular hash. And that hash promises that the data in the tables are exactly unchanged from what was submitted when that hash was created. So if we were all collaborating on a project, and rather than be in Google Sheets and we're all changing numbers on a spreadsheet, we kind of have our own spreadsheet. But now in order to finalize a change, I have to broadcast to the people that are sharing my data layer stream. They subscribe to my broadcasted data. I have to cryptographically offer to them these changes. You two review the changes and go, yep, he did exactly what we expected of him. We approve these changes. And once all three of us have signed, then a new cryptographic hash hits the chain, which validates that the information that we're all utilizing from that timestamp is authentic to the data that we had all just agreed upon being accurate. So you could, this is a long way to explain, you could have a privately hosted game, a privately hosted currency, privately hosted economics, and just be committing a small hash back to the blockchain. And maybe that's what users really want, is your game promises them NFTs that they actually have on Chia. It promises them, a fun in-game experience. And it's really just like EA Sports or Blizzard or some private company with a private server and private game, but all of their assets were built out to be compliant with blockchain, and they're able to standardize their assets, even though they're privately hosted. They're tradable via the chain, and the only counterparty risk is that this business might go out of business and stop broadcasting or something like that. And peers in the network can then mirror those private databases to improve the decentralized, think BitTorrent, because Bram Cohen, the founder of Chia, founded BitTorrent. So you have this decentralized network of people that are reflecting data and copying whatever you broadcasted from your private server. That's a singular point of failure. So then GRC goes, nope, I'm going to broadcast it too. And you go, yep, I'll copy it too. Now we have 3 versions of it that are broadcasted and available for other people to join into if we give them permission to subscribe to that data.
Ooh,
And so we could develop our own shitcoin game or whatever, and then then we could inflate it to infinity for the purpose of good economics in the game and not need more Chia to do it.
Oh, so that's
But all of our assets are still able to be traded on Chia because maybe they were made out of Chia.
It separates it in a way.
Yeah, and you could easily bootstrap liquidity and stuff with games to be able to justify like an initial distribution of real NFTs, and then it's just on players if they want NFT items, they're gonna have to go to the market and buy them.
So like there's pros to having a cost, like a tangible cost to creating a cat or a new token, so to speak, if I'm using vernacular correctly. But then there's also the downside of that piece of it, right? Where it's like you're gonna encourage people to go somewhere else, but then you also
I see him as, I used to think that too, but I actually see it as a net benefit now. And it's not trying to be a Chia maxi. I actually had to put on my Ethereum hat, my Bitcoin hat, my Pulse Chain hat, my Cosmos hat, and think interoperability here, because there are limitations. And that is a negative at its face value. However, if we think about the benefit of Chia is committing to, hey, our thing is hard money, and if it's coming out of Chia, it's going to come out of XEH, and if it's coming out of XEH, it had to get through the consensus, and if it went through the consensus, it had to be DeFi. Okay, and then Ethereum says, well, we're a little less on the DeFi, but it gives us more extensibility with how we can generate assets, and we don't need to have as much hard money in order to generate new money. Well, if we can create trustless bridges, I can have enough liquidity of one chain's assets on another chain and in cross-chain trustless dexes where there's action, and there's enough action that it'll all derive back to something. And I don't think we want to derive back to a proof of stake network that maybe I don't have representation in. I think we'd want it to default back to math. And then even if I inflate Hex to infinity, I can't inflate Chia to infinity. So there is some scarcity property there, unit of account, to be able to tie everything back.
So I just had a flash of a vision of the future where the interoperability, instead of how we have bridges, like instead of like driving the Tesla from this side of where reality to that side of reality, and then having it not be a Tesla anymore, it's a wrapped Tesla on the other side of this bridge that I just took to now be an Ethereum from Polygon. If I have Tesla everywhere I go, right? I drive from Florida to Georgia and then from Georgia to Tennessee or whatever, and I still have Tesla exactly like it is, or Hex or whatever somebody's prerogative is. That people with like people who are going to be acting in their own self-interest is probably the appropriate way to say it, are going to go where they believe there's higher security, where they believe there's more decentralization, where they believe their shit's not going to get taken from them, right? Where you can do that in the form of regulations in a POS network. So I don't know how far away this is, but because I'm thinking like, how does Chia get users, right? So if there's a hard cost to develop a new token, right, then no scammers are going to come over there. But scammers, they're also they're not going to. They bring in users at the same time.
It is a beauty that it is less attractive for scammers, and there are grants that you can earn from Chia, because remember when we discussed, Chia Network is also a company. Chia is a blockchain and it's fully decentralized, but there is also a private company that's trying to go public that has leadership and budgets and payroll, and they have capital set aside for grants for development. So if you had right now we're so early, guys, that this isn't 12-year-old Bitcoin so early. This is like I guess holy moly, it's 2023, man. This is building out the primitives, the very beginning of the roadmap. So there's going to be the better future, but right now you just don't see it. When there's enough of the primitive laid out where everybody has an easier development environment, then you're going to see the sexier and more fun DeFi stuff. But right now it's a little more of the infrastructure to get there. Like they just launched the NFT standard.
Things are going to fail. I think some things are going to fail that'll make things like this shine more. Like I think the failure of others in this case might make people, it's like waking up, right? Like, oh, when Andrew Tate starts coming out telling everyone they're in the Matrix and stuff. It is kind of like that in crypto too. It's kind of like, yeah, the price goes up, but you're supposed to be a good human and care about things that matter long term. Like that is important. Like, yeah, I think every human kind of knows, like, doing something right, you got to do it from the foundation up. And I think Vitalik, might have made a boo boo. Might have,
maybe there's a lot to be said that maybe he's not a super duper DeFi guy all the time,
or
Yeah,
he's
I
super
don't
duper like brainwashed from like just liberal westernized world, and he's really smart dev. So he kind of just goes. I think that happened to, like, I remember all those guys just really take that left edge on the politics, and you could tell they're not the strongest willed humans in the world when it comes to confrontation. So they kind of just want to set it aside, and they
he
pick
doesn't
that
look like a
side.
world class kickboxer, right? Like Andrew Tate does. And I don't give a fuck about Andrew Tate. Sorry for swearing on the show.
I just been saying it because the top
to your point of waking up, bro. You guys are obviously not as like into the NFT scene as you are into more the finance and analytics scene of the crypto, but in the NFT scene, we've been dealing with a lot of like drama. Is like reality TV, and it's talking about on-chain royalties and how these exchanges, OpenSea and stuff, can't enforce on-chain royalties, and these creators aren't getting their pay or whatever. Well, on Chia, you can actually enforce on-chain royalties, and because it's crypto and it's cypherpunk, you can get away from it if you wanted to. But it would also require peer-to-peer social agreement. So in some ways, you really haven't gotten away. You've just agreed that you didn't want to pay a royalty when exchanging a couple of assets with a friend. But if you were to go to like Dexy, which is a decentralized, let's just talk about that real quick. Dexy, you guys said Uniswap earlier, right? And we all love Uniswap because Uniswap has liquidity, and in Ethereum, based on the account model, all of the coins belong to the smart contract. And then our private keys may or may not have permission to send some of those coins to wherever we want. So the Chia UTXO, the unspent transaction output model, coin set model, is different in the sense that if you were to like get hacked in Ethereum, they have all of your coins, but in Chia, they have access to whatever individual coin they actually accessed in the hack. Now, private keys again are access to the full account because that's your sovereignty. But as far as like smart contract hacking in Ethereum, if any of us could theoretically hack Hex, we are moving all of the Hex. It all belongs to one smart contract. But in Chia, every single coin is its own actual individual coin. And they each have their own ability to be spent one time. And so you would have to individually hack every single coin. You might get lucky and be able to hack an entire tail, which is like the code that creates the consistency of that token being its own smart token. Maybe that's some crazy hack that you pull off, but even then, you don't get access to the rest of the wallet. And you don't get access to anyone else on the chain's coins of that tail, right? It's just inside of that one privately owned area. So the security is vastly superior. You can do things like I can create and this is why I brought that up, is offer files. Offer files that are peer-to-peer agreements that are predestined, and when conditions are satisfied, execute. So I have an NFT of a penguin and Sam has 10 Chia. He creates an offer file that says, I want that specific NFT ID and I'll give 10 Chia. And then I just open up the offer file. It's like a notepad text file. I just open it up in the Chia GUI and it shows me the conditions of the trade. And if I accept it, I just accept the offer. Chia comes to me, NFT goes to him trustlessly. If there was a fee, he would have had to incorporate the fee on top of the 10xCH that he was sending to me in order for that to on-chain distribute over to the content creator that earns the fee.
So what you're describing with Chia, like it's just really, really early, but and I've only started to grasp some of this, but it is almost it's a very versatile that incorporates security and privacy at such a level that
fundamental, primitive.
You can't really compare it to a lot of other chains because it is so like this shit you're talking about, you can't do on other places. Like you can't,
Right.
and that could have a TAM or like an addressable market that is global. Like if we want to do something, because I would assume you could, that's be able to manipulate in such a way where we could create other types of contracts between the three of us, where we could do all sorts of different stuff like business.
Exactly.
Right.
That's why they built the custody solution that they built, because previously the pre-farm, which was like, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but it's a lot. I think it was 21 million. I think it was equivalent to the total supply of Bitcoin, pre-farmed and then held in custody. And that's their skin in the game, right? So they're saying if anyone's going to create a market around this thing, we are obviously the biggest threat to dump it to zero with the biggest vested interest to make it the most thriving future it could possibly have. And in the beginning, they basically had Gene Hoffman holding the pre-farm and just in his wallet, right? Now they have this super custom, impenetrable security solution, though that was made so that they could transfer the entire pre-farm into, because they're basically saying like, come and get it. It's sitting right here. Come and get it. And they know you can't. And that's sort of their silent dominance, is like, how secure are we? Take all the Bitcoin in the world and put it behind a vault, and then we don't think you can get into our vault. And we think people are already getting into vaults in all of these other places all the time. We're watching hacks happen and exploits happen, and Chia is trying to be difficult to program is like a feature in this case, because it's using such an old language that either the old school folk are going to have to pick it up, or the new school folk are going to have to learn some old school code. And that's useful because it kind of helps weed out the scammers. They're less likely to learn an entire new language to come and build a scam one time. And it makes it highly auditable. Lisp is a very auditable language, very standard Lisp language. And that makes it easy for, like, when businesses do start to develop actual utilities and use cases, it'll be very easy to audit and identify where, if any, exploits do exist. Whereas right now we kind of trust these private companies that are using their own expertise and their own experience in the dev environment, but it's not nearly as decentralized in terms of how many people around the world could efficiently audit it in the industry. And so that's another security benefit that I think is you're just not finding that anywhere else.
Guys, intro to Chia.
Ask
whatever you got. Ask whatever you got. And then we'll wrap up, but we can do whatever's past intro.
We'll do a part 2 on this, because this is fascinating.
You guys will love it. And honestly, dude, when you download the client, you're gonna be like, fuck MetaMask, dude.
Well,
we already say F MetaMask.
True.
We don't like MetaMask's user UIs.
Yeah. They also have, dude, and it's nice knowing up front that you have the security, because there are open source community wallets. You'll find them on that chialinks.com. There's the Gobi wallet, which is a Chrome extension, so it's just like a MetaMask. There's Pocket, which is a mobile app that you can download on your Android or iOS, and you can see all of your NFTs there. And if you're having that goofy situation I had where it's multiple wallets inside of your wallet holding multiple different NFTs, we'll just move them all to a DID. The DID will be displayed in Pocket. You can see all the NFTs there. And there's offline offer files. I could, from the comfort of my own home, say, oh shit, dude, I owe Sam 100 XCH. But I got to get out the door, and I don't know if the transaction is going to go through. So I don't want to start it and then leave, and then it fails, and then I'm somewhere I don't have access to my internet or something. So what I do is I create the offer file conditions, save it as a little text file, put it on a thumb drive. I go over, and whenever I get to Sam's house, I flip him the thumb drive and say, hey, get your offer file off of that real quick. He just drags and drops it onto his Chia GUI, opens it up. He goes, yep, there's my 100 XCH for nothing. I'll accept that offer. Take it. Boom. He's paid. He can flip me back my hard drive or my thumb drive if he wants. If he keeps it, he keeps it. I don't care.
So that's tremendous from a privacy standpoint. Like I would think, right? Is that, am I understanding that correctly? Because it's the hash is showing up on the blockchain, but the transaction between you and me is not like, is that right? So
yeah, I mean, there's security to it where you can basically have cold storage Chia really easily. You could just thumb drive can be cold storage in Chia. And if you wanted to have like, ways of obfuscating the chain of custody, you could probably spin up multiple wallets and utilize offer files in a way that would create a chain of obfuscation between the origin and the final custody. It kind of depends on how you KYC on the front end, maybe of how you funded the wallet in the first place, or any of the wallets that are in the chain. But for instance, like KuCoin, you don't have to KYC on KuCoin, and you can have a wallet that has access to a non-KYC expired document represented by an official operating entity bank account that is able to fund a KuCoin account and then purchase Ethereum or fund that could purchase Ethereum with KuCoin and then move it to Tether and swap that for Chia, and then move Chia to a never before touched brand new created Chia wallet, and then from there you could do an offline offer file, and now whoever is holding this offline offer file and knows who the hell has to get it to have the right recipient hash, recipient wallet, then how are you going to stop that guy from delivering his package?
Oh, this is interesting. We definitely need a part 2, Orca. This has been awesome. I appreciate you coming on here, and
I do too, bro.
You bet.
This is awesome.
Bet, it's exciting.
Now
I just get
make Chia clips for like 3 hours.
Yeah, man. I'm gonna be doing a Twitter space later if you guys get bored. I know y'all get good sleep. It's only 5:30 though, or 6:30. But,
yeah, we get good sleep, but 6:30 still in that hot zone for us. We like.
I know, dude. It's like, hey, man. It's if you're winding down, you're winding down. I totally can appreciate that. But yeah, I'm just trying to help people. I think you say like, how do you get users? Download the client, take a look at it for 5 seconds, and go, oh, I'm a user now. And it's just easy.
Whether it's on here, or if you're open to doing a separate thing, like doing something where like you kind of like walk me through the process of actually doing that, and having that be a file thing that's online where we can point people to, but also like tremendously valuable for me. But that's like a tiny bit compared.
Those are the things. That's kind of why I was cool with coming on the show, because those are the things Chia needs right now. Most of their tutorials are like how to build a 180 terabyte JBOD closet farming. It's like, what, dude? Can you slow down? And they're on Linux, and they're like, open up your command line prompt, and then you're just gonna query your server. And I'm like, bro, like,
they have like all the little green things.
Me where to plug in the power? Like,
you're just
so it's intense.
You're like, this guy's a genius. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, dude. It's like, well, my NVMe SSD, and I'm like, listen, dude. I'm not in algebra right now. Like, you got to use letters that equal words. They can't just be letters all the time. Like, you're using nothing but letters, man. Like, bring back the words. But yeah,
well,
it's a lot. But I think you guys would do a great job of showing people like that there's fun user experience to be had at a very normal level.
I think the human consciousness wants more information right now. Anyway, they're going from like being they're starting to not fall for the propaganda, some of the guys, and they want to just talk about details just like I do. I know if I'm like this, then other people have to be like this, because I'm not like.
Think about it, man. A year ago, we began talking about like learning in the bear market.
Yeah,
so if you're watching the show right now, what have you been doing for a year? Have you learned anything, or are you still just chanting like 5 or 6 shelling points? Because there's a lot. I've been paying attention all year, man.
Everyone's calling me a schizophrenic on Twitter. I'm now a schizophrenic. And Marco the Hexagon, everybody's jumping on you. Of course he's a schizophrenic. I'm like,
dude, it's gross. People get gross. And like, I've been gross before, but that's why I'll stay anon and stuff, is because you should never have to feel like a human said that shit. A cookie monster who's probably like ODing on heroin behind his screen, like, who cares what that guy thinks? But the fucking stuff that people say, the vitriol that people say is like, one, it's obviously useless and probably more projection than it is anything, but it's so unfortunate because they can just go do anything else. Like, just leave. Just go do anything else. Why, if you are giving someone the free real estate to live inside of your head all day, every day, and you can't make it through 24 hours without a quip about somebody, then they own you, man. Then they are your master.
I like to think I'm hitting critical mass, I like to think I'm getting critical mass.
It's someone, you know what it is, man.
That's what
I've identified it
myself.
across.
I've
identified it across communities.
Delusional if you're getting.
It's none of that, man. It's none of that. It is vitriol in replacement of education. I don't want to learn. I figured it out. I actually have the answer to the universe. I don't need any more help. And if you're saying things at me, near me, around me that aren't the things that I have figured out as the answer to the universe, then I will attack you, because otherwise it might expose the reality that there's room for discussion and there's room for variation and for alteration. And that's really like, oh, I got to get uncomfortable again.
They might have to look in the mirror and ask themselves, am I having the relationship with my wife that I think I want to be having? No, seriously. If
there's
you
a lot,
questioning one thing, you have to question everything. And then you start looking in the mirror.
Yeah,
and then
I just don't know
why
why
looking in the mirror and you
decide
say, wait, what am
I
doing? Like,
I spend like all of the free time I have, I'm constantly learning from people that are way better than I am in the space, constantly trying to like just be first in line for the next nugget of knowledge. I just don't have time to talk shit. If I'm going to talk shit, it's going to be to people that deserve it, centralized entities that are like co-opting the narrative of crypto to turn it into exactly the opposite of what it deserves to be. I'll find an opportunity to say some nasty stuff to those people because they deserve it. But
they deserve it big time.
But the people who are just out here grinding and talking DeFi, and let's be honest, like even my Chia knowledge tonight, because my brain's foggy, I'm gonna have to go and read it again. And like we got to do this. It's repetition. We get the reps in over and over and over, and that's how we get that juice to finally yeah, man, that's how you finally get it to stick there. So when people are like, oh, I listen to him because he's smart, it's like, yeah, but you know why you don't see me? Because I'm listening to someone I think is smart, and I'm probably listening to them say the same damn thing I've heard them say a couple times, but it's like this time it finally, the bridge was connected and it made sense, it internalized, and I'm moving forward. Like you need to have that sponge-like learning. It's not an instant progress bar. It's saturation of raindrops slowly filling up that soft sponge until you're soaking with knowledge.
Yes, it's a and we'll wrap up with this. It's when I think about research and I think about a mosaic, right? You have a picture of whatever it might be. And if you zoom in more, the picture is these tiny pieces of glass, we'll say, right? And each piece of glass is coming from a different source. One's coming from a wine bottle, one's coming from a peanut butter jar, one's coming from something else, right? And you have all these tiny little pieces of glass that are put together that paint this big picture of reality, right? And when you think about research, when you think about learning, when you think about all of this, it's these tiny little bits of pieces. And maybe there's a giant wine bottle that was like in there, and there's 50,000 pieces of that in that mural of a million, right? And it has a slightly bigger influence on there because that's who you were paying attention to. But each one of those pieces is a little bit nugget of information that you've pulled from all different parts of your life, all different areas of your life. So the more you can go through and think about approaching things from a curiosity standpoint, to learn from the people around you, to open your mind and perspective to other points of view, you'll just be in a much, much, much better place in the future. And with that, we'll take us out of here with some DeFi proof. Peace.
You already know what time it is. Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning. Waiting on phone. Crypto in the morning. 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 Waiting on phone. Crypto in the morning. Crypto in the morning. Smoking a blunt on my way to the gym. 11 a.m. and I'm already tuned in. Got me some hacks and I'm making a stake. Got me some heads on, I'm making it rain. Pay me some maxi and that's just in case. Gym ready sent me to show you the way.